So whenever someone types LMA, are we thinking laryngeal mask anesthesia? No, I'm sure we know laryngeal mask airway is what we're talking about. So I'm sure we have residents also who have joined. I've heard you speak about residents. So it's wonderful that you are here on the platform and we're getting to talk to you also. So there are so many devices that we deal with in the everyday anesthesia practice. It gets really confusing. So the main thing that we want to focus on is how we are going to plan our airway. Now, LMAs are coming up in a very big way where they're almost definitive in comparison to the endotracheal tube. Endotracheal tube has a long learning curve, a very steep learning curve, whereas LMA, on the other hand, we all know is really easy to use. So what we can do is break down a few of these algorithms into a very simple flow chart. Plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. Your airway might look something like what is being shown in the picture here. Ideally, a difficult airway trolley or an airway cart should look like the one on the right side. You have everything segregated according to plan. Plan A ideally, and what we do is we start picking from one place and then we take it forward. An effective airway management requires careful planning so that backup plans can be executed when the primary technique fails. Now, LMA is primarily here, even in the emergency medicine area on the floor. We're using LMA as a rescue device, and it is as good as an endotracheal tube when it comes to oxygenation, ventilation. And now, with the second generation, we're using them in an elective anesthesia case for more than 6 to 8 hours also. So, planning what we want to do is something that I think we anesthetists are really good at. We're trained to pick up patterns even before the complication is set in. So I think LMA fits right into the execution plans of what we as anesthetists are executing for years together. The plan is always going to be tracheal intubation. We would always love to actually do the laryngoscopy, look at the cords, put in the tube, and your day is done. But LMAs are providing second generation LMAs that we're going to talk about today are providing more protection, giving you more benefits in terms of less hemodynamic response. They have better airway pressures also. They're going to reduce your airway pressures also thanks to the design. So we'll be looking all of that. The thing is, LMAs are now undoubtedly almost on par, equivalent to endotracheal intubation when it comes to maybe elective surgeries and as rescue devices in when intubation probably fails. This is the Difficult Airway Society algorithm where we talk about the plan A being tracheal intubation, plan B going to LMA immediately once you realize tracheal intubation has failed, or you're not able to visualize the larynx and therefore you don't want to take a risk, you can put in an LMA. However, if the LMA fails, come back to face mask ventilation, your BVM ventilation, and your plan D is always going to be rescue techniques. We'll be largely talking about oxygenation and ventilation that we can maintain through the LMA today. The thing is with plan B, especially when you have a failed intubation or you're using LMA as a rescue device, plan B requires you to be really, really fit, pat, and perfect with which LMA you're going to use. You've probably used them 100 times before. You're comfortable with your personal LMA preference, and you should be able to insert the LMA within 60 seconds of the first failed intubation. So this means that your airway card needs to be well prepared. Your team needs to be well prepared to hand you the device in time. Because within 60 seconds, if you put in an LMA, confirm placement, start ventilation, oxygenation, you have your patient who's stable, and then you can decide whether you want to continue with surgery, you want to intubate, because we now have intubating LMAs as well. You want to go ahead and intubate the patient through the LMA, continue surgery, or you can actually take a call. Your sympathetic reflexes are really obtunded because you have something called an LMA in hand and you're used to using it. There are hundreds of devices, like we said. We started with the classical LMA in the image A. Then we came to ProSeals, which kind of gave you a better airway protection, reduced risk of aspiration. Plus, the design was very nice. It was a reusable one, and we could use it for at least 40-45 times, autoclavable. But the problem was we needed to have metallic inserter with ProSeal. That was overcome by something called as the LMA Supreme, which had a preformed curve. And then came the cuffless ones, the iGel, and the recent one is the Busca, which you can see in image in E. And then you have the Orogains now. All of these are second generation LMAs. The difference between the first generation and second generation is largely where they've given you another port for the nasogastric tubing. So the initial first generation, the design was almost like 2D thing with a face mask, which was going to sit on the laryngeal inlet with an endotracheal, so not an endotracheal, an airway tube. So this was like a conduit between your face mask and your endotracheal tube. So Dr. Archie Brain in 1981, we all know that when he came up with this concept of laryngeal mask airway, where he said, can we have something like a conduit between an endotracheal tube and a face mask? Because BVA ventilation is difficult, intubation is difficult. So what do? I put on a mask on the larynx and then we can ventilate the larynx directly. So this was a blindly inserted airway device that was designed in 1981, became popular by 1990s. In fact, there is this study, if you can actually go on Google, you can see the videos that Dr. Archie Brain has put up where he's actually locally anesthetized his airway and he's inserted an element, he's run a marathon. And he has recorded a reduced airway pressure when the LMA is inside and when there is no LMA, the airway pressures were higher. So he's been able to actually definitively establish that an LMA is a good device and it reduces airway pressures, better oxygenation, better ventilation, and all of those things. But the problem with the classical LMA was the mask did not have a great seal pressure. The thing was, if the regurgitant fluid or intra-abdominal pressures, they kind of overrode the seal pressures. And what happened was the risk for aspiration would go up. So if you look at all the literature, you will see that LMAs are largely contraindicated in obesity, in pregnant women. If you don't know the NBM status, if there's a hiatus hernia, or any reason for increased intra-abdominal pressures, or prolonged surgeries where the chance of aspiration would go up, the LMAs were contraindicated. Now cut to scene 2, where you have a second generation LMA. The second generation LMA tried to overcome all of these problems. What they did was they said, let's give an nasogastric tube along with the airway tube and the side. And this nasogastric tube, the outlet would open at the distal end of the laryngeal mask. Now, the thing is, if you look at the anatomy, the tip of this laryngeal mask lies in the esophageal. It lies in the esophageal opening near the esophageal aperture, near the esophageal sphincter. What happens is if you insert your nasogastric, if this LMA is in place and you insert your nasogryles tube from here, it will enter the esophagus, go into the stomach and help you decompress the stomach and its contents. You can aspirate the contents, reduce the risk of aspiration further. The second thing that they did, this is pictogram of the ProSeal. What they did with ProSeal is they came up with a better cuff design. If you look at all the second generation LMAs that we have here, they have a beautiful 2 cuff design. You have one inflating line, but this inflating line actually inflates 2 cuffs. There's an anterior ventral cuff and there's a dorsal cuff, which means that you're inflating this area as well, which in the small confines of your laryngopharyngeal space, what happens is this cuff will further get pushed over the laryngeal inlet and therefore increase the cuff pressure, the seal pressures, but not increasing the cuff pressures. We need to understand there are 2 kinds of pressures when we're talking about the LMA. There is a cuff pressure and there's a seal pressure. What is the cuff pressure? The cuff pressure is the pressure the cuff generates around the perilaryngeal structures when inflated. When you inflate a full volume of the laryngeal mask, as recommended by that particular device, if you suppose we say 15 to 20 cc of air in a 4-number LMA, adult size LMA, whichever you're using, approximately 15 to 20 cc's of air needs to be inflated. If you inflate the whole thing, the cuff is going to get inflated and this is going to generate a certain amount of pressure on the perilaryngeal structures. This is the cuff pressure, which should not exceed 60 centimeters of water pressure. Okay. Because if that happens, then it's going to cause a lot of ischemia on the perilaryngeal structures. Your patient is going to wake up with a sore throat, maybe even something that will take around 7 to 10 days to get better because there was a lot of ischemia, edema. The patient is probably going to have a hoarseness of voice, which is not really related to your vocal cords, like in the case of endotracheal tube, but the patient is going to have a lot of complaints. And those complaints is something that you will have to deal with post-operatively once you've extubated the patient. So that is the cuff pressure, which should not exceed 60 centimeters of water pressure. That you can actually confirm with your manometer, right? We have those aneroid manometers, which will tell us the cuff pressures. That is something that you can actually measure. However, what we cannot measure is something that is called as the seal pressure. The seal pressure is when the cuff is inflated, it is going to generate a certain amount of seal over the laryngeal inlet. This is the seal pressure, which was very less with the first generation LMAs. The second generation LMAs, you get somewhere between 20 to 25 millimeters of mercury seal pressures with a better cuff designs. This further improved the sealoverlaryngeal inlet, separating the larynx from the esophagus, therefore further reduction in risk of aspiration. Plus, you had the nasogastric port, which opened into the tip of the laryngeal mask, and you could aspirate the stomach contents. So even if you did not know the NBM status, say in emergency surgeries, or as a rescue measure, you could actually put in the nasogastric tube, suction out the stomach contents, and further reduce the risk of aspiration. Plus, what they went ahead and did was eventually with LMA Supreme, they had this bite block here. So generally, we say that with the LMAs, we don't need to really paralyze the patient. You would need a paralysis when you would want to actually manipulate trachea and the vocal cords. We don't want the spasm. But here in this case, we realize that we do not require paralytics. So there was a chance that the patient would bite on the tube. With the classic LMA, that was a problem. With ProSeal, they came up with flexometallic tube, so that was not a problem, kinking and biting of the tube. But with the newer generations, you will see that there is an integral bite block inside of the LMA air tube itself, which is going to make sure that the patient doesn't bite. Second thing is there's a marking on the integral bite block where it will come between the incisors. It will also help you confirm placement. We will see types of placement confirmation going forward. But this is what we got with the newer generation LMAs. Then came the generation of the ILMAs, the intubating LMAs. Now, if you see the intubating LMAs, all the newer ones, all the second generation newer makes and models that have come up, almost all of them you can use almost an 8-number endotracheal tube with the regular 3-number and the 4-number LMAs, adult size that we are using. You can use an endotracheal tube as large as 7 or 8 internal diameter endotracheal tubes. The second thing that we can do with the second generation LMAs is you can pass a fiber optic. A bronchoscope as large as a 5.7 mm fiber optic bronchoscope can be inserted. You can do your procedures. We can have single lung ventilation. You can have a DLT, and all of those things can be actually railroaded eventually once you've put in an LMA, ventilated the patient, stabilized the patient, put in a bronchoscope, then you can thread over whatever tube you want. So all of these things have been made possible with all the newer designs that have come up. The cuffless ones, especially the iGel and the Buska, are designed to make sure the cuff pressures are minimal. I'm sure many of you using iGels. In fact, iGel is one of the most popular and the most favorite LMA, I believe, with our community because the learning curve is really superb. According to literature, it's almost, I think, 80% success rate with the first pass after you've done it 5 times on a mannequin, which is like brilliant. You can't say the same for endotracheal intubation. The cuff pressures are really low. And you can actually pass an endotracheal tube, a smaller size, not as large as an 8-number, but a smaller size endotracheal tube can be inserted through your 3 and 4 numbers aram se. Plus, it's also wide enough you can thread a fiber optic poke through it as well, a flexible fiber optic spoke. This is the Buska, which I would like to discuss because this is the latest second generation non-cuffed LMA. What they have is a beautiful design. I have a video. So this is the Buska here. If you can see, it is almost transparent. It has fins on the dorsal side. It is not cuffed, but the design is so brilliant that they have fins over the posterior side where there is space for collection of secretions. Now, there are 2 advantages to this. The secretions will collect inside this dorsal fins or kind of projections that come over it. What that does is it improves the seal pressure because of the secretions collecting in pouches there and also reduces risk of aspiration. Plus, you will be extubating the patient intact and you'll be bringing the Buska out in toto. You'll be able to suction out the secretions, prevent aspiration. And it also has your nasogastric or gastric reflux drainage. You have the integral bite block. And this tab is used to prevent epiglottis from falling over. So this is also one of the most brilliant designs. I'm sure you would love the Buska as well. We have, like I was talking about, the ILMA. The first generation ILMA, it did not have a gastric port. Plus, if you can see, this angle was really acute with the endotracheal tube coming out at 45 degrees. We have a new device called as a Blockbuster LMA. It has an endotracheal tube that you can use with a Parker tip. If you can see, it's got really flexible kind of tip where your laryngeal inlet, the posterior laryngeal inlet is where mostly the tube abuts and you'll be having a lot of trouble trying to force the tube in. There could be trauma, there could be edema, a lot of those problems. But with this Parker tip, the trauma remains really, really minimal. In fact, nothing. You might find a little bit of resistance while putting it in, but I have a video that I will show you. And the tube is flexometallic. So it does not kink or bend. It can just pass through your larynx. Plus, if you can see the outlet, angle is 30 degrees. It's not 45. So that with the 45-degree, it would abut. It would probably enter the cords, but it would then abut with the anterior structures of the larynx. Here, this improves the entry, and according to literature and statistics, they say the success of endotracheal intubation through this intubating LMA, the blockbuster, it's almost 80% first pass for a novice who's doing it for the first time, which is very large to claim, but we are having a lot of success with this. A lot of our fraternity colleagues are actually using this right now and they're finding it really useful, especially when you have a difficult intubation. Plus, you're going to be avoiding all the hemodynamic disturbances that you can have with laryngoscopy and difficult intubation. This is, you can put in the LMA, ventilate, stabilize the patient, and then pass the tube, and then go on and go ahead, complete the surgery. This is something that we're finding very, very interesting. So this is the latest one that I was talking about. This is the blockbuster laryngeal mask airway. We also have the LMA protector, which is another intubating LMA that we have in industry right now. This is also, you can see the make and model is really comfortable. The post-op complications like sore throat and all of those things are also less with this. We have the Auragain also, which is the Ambu product. The Auras earlier silicone made, they were, if you can actually handle the Auragain, you will see that it's got a really good, the material is really comfortable. The chances of your post-op sore throat is less. Auragain is gastric aspiration and intubation. You can actually pass an endotracheal tube as large as 8 number in this. They have got a really large, really deep bowl of the laryngeal mask where the endotracheal tube can be inserted and intubated. So this is about the different types of LMAs we have, the latest ones that we have in the market today. Let's talk about how we are going to insert the different ones, and let's talk about what are the few troubleshooting tips and techniques that we might want to use. This is a small video I would like to share with all of you.
And transfer it to the palm of the same hand that is holding the protective cradle, supporting the device between the thumb and index finger. Place a small bolus of water-based lubricant, such as KY jelly, onto the middle of the smooth surface of the cradle in preparation for lubrication. Do not use silicone-based lubricants.
I hope we are all using water-based lubricants, because the lignocaine jelly that we end up using is actually something that's irritant in a longer period, because it kind of forms flakes and scaling over the mucous membranes. Now your patient is going to wake up with a really bad sore throat or something irritating his airway. It's going to be flaking, it's going to be scaling, and this goes on for at least 48 to 72 hours. It takes a long time for these scales to actually dissolve and kind of get removed from the body. So your patient is going to be complaining of something not okay with airway around. Yeah. So I hope we're using water-based jelly and water-soluble jellies and not silicone-based or lignocaine jelly. It's really important that we also not kind of use these things.
Grasp the eye gel with the opposite free hand along the integral bite block and lubricate the back, sides and front of the cuff with a thin layer of lubricant. This process may be repeated if lubrication is not adequate. But after lubrication has been completed, check that no bolus of lubricant remains in the bowl of the cuff or elsewhere on the device. Avoid touching the cuff of the device with your hands. Place the eye gel back into the cradle in preparation for insertion. Move the eye gel from the protective cradle and grasp the lubricated eye gel firmly along the integral bite block. Position the device so that the eye gel cuff outlet is facing towards the chin of the patient. The patient should be in the sniffing the morning air position, with head extended and neck flexed. The chin should be gently pressed down before proceeding to insert. Introduce the leading soft tip into the mouth of the patient in a direction towards the hard palate. Glide the device downwards and backwards along the hard palate with a continuous but gentle push until a definitive resistance is felt. Do not apply excessive force on the device during insertion. It is not necessary to insert fingers or thumbs into the patient's mouth during the process of insertion. If there is early resistance during insertion, a jaw thrust or insertion with deep rotation is recommended. When inserted to a definitive resistance, the tip of the eye gel should be located into the upper esophageal opening, and the cuff should be located against the laryngeal framework. The incisors should be resting on the integral bite block. Inserting the eye gel, it should be remembered that partial resistance and then a feeling of give way may sometimes be felt before the endpoint resistance is met. This is due to the passage of the bowl of the eye gel through the forcial pillars. This is quite normal and consistent with correct insertion, but in such cases, insertion needs to continue until definitive resistance is felt. Let's look at some eye gel insertions in real patients. Note the sniffing the morning air position and the gentle press down on the chin. See how there is no need for fingers to be inserted in the mouth. There is never a need to apply excessive force or to repeatedly push down on the device once definitive resistance has been felt.
After a visual inspection of the LMA, check the inflation line after closing the red plug at the port.
So this is the ProSeal. One thing I'd like to clarify is morning sniffing air position is great for all LMAs. But if you are suspecting a cervical spine or there is a cervical spine mobilization difficulties or immobility for some reason, then it's perfectly all right. In fact, LMAs are meant for rescue where cervical spine mobility is in question. You can insert it as easily. Maybe you might have to use a few maneuvers to troubleshoot the placement. But in cases of cervical spine immobility or cervical spine injury query, you don't want to move the spine, you can insert the LMA in a neutral position as well. This is the ProSeal, and you can see that there is an inserter there. We'll take a look at this and then move to the others.
Always use water-soluble lubricant like the KY jelly for lubrication and not the lignocaine jelly, as it may delay the return of protective reflexes. Apply the jelly at the inlet of the gastric drainage tube for ease of insertion of Ryle's tube and on the posterior surface of the cuff. Too much jelly on the anterior surface of the cuff may block the airway aperture. Here I have opened a number 3 ProSeal LMA, which can take a Ryle's tube of a size of 16 number. But I have used a 14 number Ryle's tube here. Insert the Ryle's tube through the gastric drainage tube till the tip of the Ryle's tube is just seen at the anterior aperture of the gastric drainage tube. Now place the metal introducer tip into the locating strap at the rear of the cuff. Fold the tubes around the convex surface of the blade and fit the proximal end of the tube into the matching slots of the introducer. Insert a syringe into the valve port of the inflation line. And after confirming that the red plug has sealed the valve, deflate the cuff by holding it firmly against a flat surface. Deflate completely till the cuff walls are tightly flattened against each other. Check for any folds or wrinkles on the cuff wall. A cuff deflator provided by the company can sometimes be used for the same. The flattened wedge shape facilitates a traumatic insertion and correct position, though some people may prefer partly inflated cuff of the LMA at the time of insertion. The ideal head position would be head extension with neck flexion as an intubation, but the advantage of LMA is that it can be inserted with minimal head and neck manipulation. Open the mouth and introduce the LMA along the hard palate with the bowl of the LMA facing the tongue. Slide it further into the hypopharynx till definite resistance is felt. Smooth forward movement of the Ryle's tube into the esophagus confirms the proper placement of LMA.
So these are two important confirmatory signs. The integral bite block with the black marking on most of the LMAs will tell you if that comes between the incisors of the patient, your LMA is in place. The second most important confirmatory sign is if your Ryle's tube, if that can be passed easily, that means the tip of the LMA is in the esophageal opening and your nasogastric tube is passing easily. So that is something that is one of the confirmatory signs that the LMA is in place. It's not displaced. You don't have to remove it. So even before you've attached your circuit and checked for auscultatory signs, you've already realized that this is in place. The third thing with cuffs, tubes, LMAs is once you start inflating the cuff, you'll see LMA bob up a little, rising. So never hold the LMA down when you're inflating the cuff. When you're inflating the cuff, the LMA will rise up, and that's another sign that your LMA is in place. So these are the 3 confirmatory signs that you can have even before you've connected the circuit.
Once the Riles tube is in place, the metal introducer can be gently removed along the curvature of the LMA. Now inflate the cuff with the recommended volume of air as printed on each LMA. Make sure the intra-cuff pressure is less than 60 centimeters of water. Avoid holding the tubes during inflation as it prevents the mask from settling in the correct position. A small outward movement may be seen as LMA seats itself into the hypopharynx. Now connect the LMA to the anesthesia circuit and confirm ventilation of adequate tidal volume, normal airway pressures as seen on the monitor.
Ideally, you should not be restricting the movement of the LMA like this, in this case, when you're inflating the cuff, because the bob up is another confirmatory sign that the LMA is in place. So this part I would not really concur with. The pressures are not more than 60 centimeters. This is the Brimakomi bounce test. Okay, if you can see what he's doing, I'll just replay this part. What he's doing is he's inserting a bit of a gel, your water-soluble, water-based gel, approximately around 1 to 2 centimeter width of gel inside the nasogastric port. Okay, and then what he does is he presses upon the suprasternal notch. As he presses, you can see the gel moving up and down gently. This confirms that the LMA is in place. This is called as a Brimakomi bounce test, which confirms that the LMA is in place, it's not displaced. What does this exactly do? Your laryngeal mask, the tip of the laryngeal mask is going to be lying in the esophageal opening, which is corresponding to your suprasternal notch. When you compress on the suprasternal notch, you are generating a back pressure, and this pressure is generated through the nasogastric port opening. So the gel will be moving, will bounce up and down gently. If it does that, that means your nasogastric port is in place, that means the LMA is in place. So that's how you confirm the placement. And like we said, passing the nasogastric tube with penis is another sign that it's in place. You can aspirate the content and confirm it. And of course, we have our 5-point auscultation also that we do to confirm placement. And tidal CO2 is going to be, your capnography is going to be gold standard either ways. That does not change. But in the absence of capnography, that is going to be something that we'll have to. So there is this video that I wanted to share with.
Blockbuster is extremely useful, difficult airway gadgets. Unpack all the items and keep it on a sterile tray. Lubricate the intubating LMA well. After induction, insert the Blockbuster intubating LMA. A little jaw thrust may be needed. Place the LMA till the resistance of the posterior pharyngeal wall is felt. Inflate the cuff of the intubating LMA. This is a 3-number LMA with 20 ml of air. Connect.
The latest recommendation with the inflation of the cuff is we start with inflating the cuff with half the volume of what is recommended. So if it is 20 cc, you start with 10 or 12, never less than 1/4. But you do not actually inflate the whole thing at a time, because eventually through the surgery, we're going to have the cuff getting inflated with the gases that we are providing to the patient. So latest recommendation for LMA inflation is you start with half the volume that is recommended. It is written on the LMA. So 3-number, if it is asking you to inflate 14 cc or 20 cc, start with half, 7 or 10, and then you can go up later depending upon if you are finding any leak. If you can hear a leak, palpate a leak, and if you can see your end-tidal CO2 capnography showing you there's a leak. If nothing of that sort, if your aneroid manometer is also showing you a good cuff pressure, then you don't need to increase the volume of air that you've used to inflate the cuff.
To the ventilating circuit, confirm with the EtCO2 graph and the pressure volume loops of the ventilator. Now deepen the plane of the anesthesia with muscle relaxants and inhalations, and meanwhile lubricate the flexometallic endotracheal tube that comes along with the blockbuster LMA. It has a soft Parker tip for ease of intubation. Disconnect the circuit and through the ventilating port of the blockbuster intubating LMA, insert the flexometallic endotracheal tube. Some resistance may be felt, but it's smooth insertion. Insert up to around 26 or 28 mark. Connect the ET tube adapter and then to the ventilating circuit. Confirm the intratracheal placement of the endotracheal tube with EtCO2 and the ventilating graphs and auscultate properly bilaterally for air entry for reconfirmation of the endotracheal tube intratracheal. Then inflate the cuff of the endotracheal tube with 3 to 4 ml of air. Take the purple colored rod, that is the endotracheal tube stabilizing rod, to stabilize the flexometallic endotracheal tube that has been placed through the blockbuster LMA, pushing the endotracheal tube inside using the purple colored ET stabilizing rod. Pull out the blockbuster intubating LMA slowly, and as soon as the blockbuster LMA comes out, hold the flexometallic tube properly, secure it and stabilize it. Connect it to the ventilating circuit and confirm the placement intratracheal via the EtCO2 graphs and the ventilating pressure volume loop graph, and confirm bilateral proper placement with bilateral air entry by auscultation bilaterally. Check for the ventilating cuff whether it is inflated or not.
I really like to thank Dr. Kalaishwaran for giving us this video. So this is, and also check for the aneroid manometer readings for your cuff inflation, because since we're doing this blind, so this is how we are going to be inserting. Troubleshooting is, there is one Brimacombe technique that I would like. So what we can do is, the Brimacombe technique for insertion of LMAs, you put in a bougie through the nasogastric port and under laryngoscopic vision, purposely intubate put in the bougie, intubate the esophagus, and then railroad the LMA over the bougie. That would confirm a placement, and that gives you better placement than any other. If you're trying to intubate with your laryngoscope, you see that it's a CL4, cannot intubate. What you can do is put in a bougie inside the esophagus, railroad an LMA, and your LMA will be almost, most of the 99% of the times your LMA will be placed in the correct position. You will not have to worry about displacement. So that's the Brimacombe technique that we can use with the second generation LMAs.
The tip actually impacts against the arytenoids and it bunches up and it doesn't seat itself well, and you don't get a good seal and you struggle to ventilate the patient. So one technique to guide the tip into the esophagus is to use an introducer, some kind of bougie. Now, you'll recognize most of your introducers have got a coud tip on the end, and you don't want to use that end because that end is designed to get things into the trachea. You want to use the back end as your guide. So you take your supraglottic airway and you well lubricate your gastric drainage channel. Note that I'm putting this through the nasogastric drainage channel. Sorry, not nasogastric, through the gastric drainage channel. And I'm putting it so the tip of my bougie is sticking out there. And then I can do almost like a Sharka grip to hold that in place. And often if you're struggling with placement of your supraglottic airway, this is where you can actually use your laryngoscope to open the mouth, deliberately place the bougie down the esophagus, use it to feed the supraglottic into place, and then withdraw on your bougie, inflate your cuff, and that should have placed the tip in the perfect spot and allow you to ventilate. In fact, studies have shown that this improves your insertion success rate, improves your ceiling pressures, etc. So that's the Brimmican
I hope it's
technique for using the bougie
audible.
when you say
The volume is
with your
really low, but I
placement
hope
of
the visualization
a
is
supraglottic airway.
okay.
Thank you, Dr. Shruti. That